What is a narcissist? Let me take these off. Let's talk about what narcissism really is, how to recognize the genuine pattern, and why misusing this word has become such a cultural problem. I've spent years watching how psychological language gets misused in everyday life, and few words suffer more than narcissist. These days, someone sets a boundary, and suddenly the internet calls them a narcissist. Someone ends a relationship, and they're labeled toxic. Someone disappoints us, frustrates us, or simply behaves differently than we hoped, and the diagnosis appears instantly. It's remarkable how quickly ordinary behavior gets pathologized. So I want to slow this conversation down, because psychological terms are meant to bring clarity, not confusion. They should help us understand people more accurately, not flatten them into categories or make villains out of them. When psychologists use the term narcissism, they're describing a deeper emotional and relational structure. It's not about confidence or ambition or someone who enjoys attention. Narcissism is fundamentally organized around fragility. Think of it as being brittle rather than soft. It's a rigid structure that shatters easily under pressure. They must work constantly to maintain a stable identity. Their self-worth sits on uneven ground, and they depend on the outside world to keep it steady. They need admiration to feel whole. They need control to feel safe. They need others to reflect back a very specific version of themselves so they don't collapse into shame or self-doubt. This is why their behavior often looks contradictory from the outside. You might see grandiosity or entitlement, but underneath, there's fear. Fear of inadequacy, fear of being insignificant, fear of being exposed. Many of the manipulative or defensive behaviors that we associate with narcissism are really attempts to keep that fragile identity from falling apart. When they try to control the environment, or you, what they're actually doing is trying to regulate their own internal panic. And this emotional instability shapes their relationships. Early on, someone with narcissistic traits may seem incredibly charming or attentive because they've learned how to manage impressions. But as the relationship deepens, the fragility underneath begins to surface. Criticism becomes intolerable. Someone else's needs can feel destabilizing to them. They may distort reality, rewrite conversations, or blame others to avoid emotional exposure. None of this excuses harm, but understanding the emotional machinery behind it makes the pattern clearer. Now here's the important part. Most people who get casually labeled as narcissists do not have this deep structural pattern. Many people are self-focused, conflict avoidant, emotionally inconsistent, or stressed out in ways that limit their empathy. Those qualities might be frustrating, but they are part of the normal variation of human behavior, not evidence of a personality disorder. This is why careless labeling is dangerous. The moment you call someone a narcissist, you shut down curiosity. You stop asking what is actually happening in the relationship. You stop considering your own boundaries, your own expectations, your own reactions. The label becomes a shortcut that blocks real understanding. There's another trend that deserves attention. In recent years, psychologists on television, influencer psychologists online, and public commentators have begun diagnosing public figures from afar. They watch a clip or an interview and announce that someone is a narcissist or a sociopath. But you cannot diagnose someone you have never clinically evaluated. You cannot understand a person's internal world from a curated soundbite. Diagnosis requires history, context, and private clinical observation, data that is impossible to get from a screen. When psychologists diagnose from a distance, they teach the public to confuse performance with science. That habit has turned psychological language into a form of entertainment instead of a tool for understanding. And it encourages the rest of us to pathologize people instead of trying to understand them. So instead of asking, is this person a narcissist, I want to offer some different questions. What patterns am I actually seeing? What am I responding to emotionally? What expectations have I placed on this person that may not match their capacities? Is this a clash of personalities, a boundary issue, a lack of maturity, or something else entirely? You see, these questions lead to clarity. They lead to insight. They help you understand relationships instead of collapsing them into labels. Because mislabeling people doesn't just distort them, it distorts us. It narrows our perception. It encourages us to use diagnosis as a weapon instead of a lens. And it trains us to replace discernment with certainty. So when you hear the word narcissist, pause. Be curious. Look for patterns, not insults. Look for dynamics, not diagnoses. Psychology is not a weapon, it's a lens. And how we use that lens shapes how we see other people and ourselves.